ordained minister of the gospel. But the third category really is a human being. I'm here as a human being to say this is an issue that affects all of us at a moral level. It's tomorrow that will be the 50th anniversary of Dr. King's dream speech. And when he says, as he often said, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, those are pretty significant. That's a pretty significant statement. He described in his dream speech the way in which society ought to reflect the dignity of all people. And I think, frankly, it's no surprise to all of us, we're still working on this. This is a big issue. And as surely as the civil rights issue was the civil issue of the day, moral issue of their day, I think it goes without question. Many people have said it already. The immigration reform issue is the moral issue of the day, the civil rights issue of the day. And so as we come and speak on these kinds of things, it's on that basis. The fact that there are 11 million undocumented folks in the country, I think, is example A, that the system is broken. The system is broken. And when Dr. King also said, we're here because of injustice. This is an injustice issue when the system is so broken that you have children taken from their parents, when you have parents taken from their children, when you have the kind of fallout at the personal moral level, that's an issue that must be addressed. We as Americans have to do better on that issue rather than just leave situation the way it is. That's not new information to any of us. I live and work not only at a university but in local church ministry, which means the folks that are living in the shadows, the folks that fear that a fender bender they're going to lose a parent or lose a child. We live and move, have our being every day with folks who are in these kinds of circumstances. And so, even with the kind of, Carl and I were in Washington with a number of other folks recently, to say to representatives, we need you to lead with courage on this issue. Even if the Senate bill is not a perfect bill, who was it that said, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good? There is headway that we can make. I think it goes without saying, it seems to be overwhelming data. American folks want movement on this issue. And so to advocate for that, to challenge in all of our congregations or whatever kind of context, it is an economic issue, absolutely. It is a sociological issue, which is the law enforcement. It is a moral issue as well. And frankly, as Christians in the faith community, our basis is not just a pragmatic kind of approach. The Bible, which is our stand for faith and practice, is shot through in every chapter about God's concern for the foreigner, for the alien, for the sojourner. And frankly, whether you're talking about Abraham or Joseph or Ruth or Jesus himself, who was an immigrant, you can't get away from the fact that God has a great concern for those on the margins and in the circumstances that we find here today. And how often does he say these kinds of things, that the reason we're to care for these issues, not simply economic, that's an important part, but the fact that faith communities would champion this, that God himself is a God of justice, and he wants his people to reflect justice. And he says, you are to love those who are foreigners, for you yourselves were foreigners in Egypt. And frankly, unless we're Native American, we've all immigrated at some point. We all have a history there. And so he says, even there, never forget that you were a foreigner. Sometimes you wonder, don't we, whether we have historical amnesia. How did we get here? And we have to be very careful, I think, that we don't forget. Because if we do forget, we treat people differently. We treat families differently. There's something that is lost to the dignity of all people when we start simply treating this situation as kind of a simply political. And so, if all people are created in the image of God, if all people have dignity, if all people have potential to contribute to the common good, then this is an issue that we are pleading with for political leaders to act and act with courage. And as much as we look back in the 60s and look to the people who acted with courage, history will tell whether we are on the right side or the wrong side of this issue. Because 20 or 30 years from now, people will look back at us, as surely as we look back now at the 60s, and say, who was it that acted for the moral good of all? Or who was it that simply sat on their hands? Or who was it that actually actively worked against the common good? That's why we need this Christian.
Let's thank our panelists. Because I think we're going to have a lively Q&A period. And I'm going to ask Sarah to come up and share her story as a dreamer. I have Annie listed here. I thought Annie was going to give a speech. She told me she did not come prepared to give a speech, so she will be singing the national anthem.